As a frequent flyer myself, who also experiences intense flying anxiety, I have developed very specific emotional needs while in the air. Now, I've long since learned to suppress my physical needs while flying. Like all other air travelers, I've grown accustomed to being treated like poultry stuffed in a cage and strapped onto the back of a semi barreling down the highway. Everything is cramped. There's no room to move around or stretch your legs. There's no concern for your comfort. On Spirit Airlines, the analogy becomes quite literal, because on Spirit in particular, the only snack they give you, and this is true, is they give you a handful of chicken feed, which the flight attendants toss in your lap as they walk down the aisle scowling at you. And of course, if you eat the chicken feed, then it's an upcharge of $43 a person, I think. This is the modern flying experience. You sit there miserable, neglected, squished between a sumo wrestler and someone's emotional support llama. Unless you fly first class, of course, in which case you will enjoy the decadent luxury of being treated like a human being rather than livestock. In first class, you can engage in wild flights of fancy, such as bending your knee and moving your elbow. In first class, the flight attendants will even mostly suppress their disdain for you, which is nice. And there are other perks too. Like in first class, the airline does you the favor of making sure there's actually enough room in the overhead compartment for the carry-on baggage they said you could bring on the plane, as opposed to in the coach experience where half of the people have to check their bags, which they will likely never see again. That's just how it goes. And this is why I have lowered my standards and reduced my list of needs and expectations to really just one item. And that is, it's an emotional thing. For the sake of my emotional well-being, I only ask that the flight attendants do not appear visibly startled by turbulence, because even a slightly raised eyebrow or a barely audible whoa is, to me, a signal that we all face certain death. So until today, my point is that was the one meager favor that I asked of the flight crew. But now it seems I must add one more item to the list, because I also ask that the pilot does not cross-dress while flying. I do not want to be an unwilling participant in a drag show 35,000 feet in the air, which is why I will certainly never fly Virgin Atlantic. Not that I ever would have flown them anyway, to be fair, but here's the story from CNN. It says Virgin Atlantic has said that it is scrapping gendered uniform options in an effort to champion the individuality of its employees. The British airline announced in a press release on Wednesday that cabin crew, pilots, and ground staff can select which uniform they feel most comfortable in, no matter their gender, gender identity, or gender expression. Optional pronoun badges will also become available for crew and passengers. Juha Jarvinen, who's Virgin Atlantic's chief commercial officer, said in the press release, the company believes it's important to encourage people to embrace their individuality and be their true selves at work. Jarvinen added, it is for that reason that we want to allow our people to wear the uniform that best suits them and how they identify, and ensure our customers are addressed by their preferred pronouns. Now, if this seems a bit unsettling to you, don't worry, because CNN quotes a judge from RuPaul's Drag Race who says that this is all a very good thing. And obviously, there could be no better authority on proper standards of conduct in air travel than a judge from RuPaul's Drag Race, at least according to CNN. Quote, Michelle Visage, a judge on RuPaul's Drag Race All-Stars, who showcased the uniform alongside staff, welcomed the move. Quote, as the mother of a non-binary child and as an ally to the LGBTQ+ community, these efforts by Virgin Atlantic to further inclusivity for its people are extremely important and personal to me, she said in the press release. People feel empowered when they're wearing what best represents them. And this gender identity policy allows people to embrace who they are and bring their full selves to work. Virgin Atlantic said the changes are part of a wider initiative under its Be Yourself agenda. Well, this is great, especially when coupled with the news from earlier in the year that airlines are lowering their recruiting requirements for pilots so as to create a more diverse and equitable workforce. So what that means is that your racially diverse, genderqueer, pansexual drag queen pilot who goes by the name Captain Hot Pants or something may not be the best equipped to fly the aircraft, but at least he's being himself. So you can... Here's the commercial, by the way. Let's just pause and watch this commercial. This is an airline commercial. You watch this and tell me, you want to fly this airline? This is what you want? Virgin Atlantic, see the world differently. Well, they certainly are delivering on that promise anyway. Anyway, you can take comfort, at least, as your plane is nosediving into the Pacific. You can take comfort in the fact that your pilot lived by his truth. And now he's dying by it. And he's taking all of you with him, which is really an honor, I guess. Now, I'm only being slightly facetious here. I actually do appreciate this move by Virgin Atlantic for two reasons. Okay, so for one thing, if the captain of my plane is emotionally and mentally unstable, I want to know that ahead of time. I actually want him to advertise that. And there's no better way for him to advertise it than by dressing in drag. Of course, this only works to the passenger's advantage if the pilot announces it prior to departure, and if the passengers who value their lives are then given an opportunity to deboard. So it would sound something like this, like, "Hi, folks, from the flight deck, this is your captain speaking. We'll be taking off in about 10 minutes after a short taxi down the runway. Also, I am personally wearing a skirt for this evening's flight. My father didn't love me, and so this is what I'm doing now. I'll tell you more about it when we're in the air. Thanks for flying with us." So if there was an announcement like that, I mean, it could work out to everybody's advantage. But I don't think that's how it will work on Virgin Atlantic, so I suppose this potential positive is negated. But there is still this, that the whole stunt exposes the utter inanity and absurdity of the left's notion of individuality. Because first of all, this is not really individuality at all. When a man cross-dresses, he is not inventing a new style or doing something nobody's ever done before. He is rather embracing a different style, one that is ugly and disordered, but he didn't create it. This is not something that originates in the depths of his being. It originates in the culture. The culture has told him that this is a fashionable, brave, laudable way to dress and behave. He is, in fact, conforming. This is why you'll notice that drag queens, though they are supposed to be fierce individualists, all end up looking exactly the same. It's almost like there's a drag queen uniform, which happens to be modeled after early 90s Tim Burton films for whatever reason. This is true, too, of people who endeavor to be non-binary or androgynous in their style of dress. They all end up looking the same, right? Right down to the hairstyle and the facial piercings. There is a much, much greater and more vibrant and interesting variety of styles among men who dress like men and women who dress like women than there are among men and women who endeavor to break through these binary categories. They all end up looking like clones created in the back of a Hot Topic or something. Second, even though all of this be yourself stuff is basically a sham, and modern culture's notion of an individual is far more rigid and restricting than ever, we also see here why individuality and being oneself are not the ideal in every situation, or even in most situations. Because to be an adult in a civilized society means controlling your impulses and conforming yourself to certain standards of conduct. As you go about your day, you find yourself in different roles, all kinds of roles, as employee, as customer, as neighbor, as parent, as spouse. Some of these roles are situational, some endure and maintain every day, all day through your whole life, but each role is accompanied by expectations and responsibilities. Things you're supposed to do and not do, say and not say, whether you like it or not. So you bring your full self into each role in a physical and literal sense, but there may be aspects of your personality, okay? There may be inclinations or preferences or predilections you have, which are not appropriate and should not be expressed or engaged in given the role or circumstance. So if you walk through life declaring that you're going to be yourself everywhere all the time, meaning that you'll simply do whatever you want, not respecting any standards or acknowledging any expectations, then everything in your life quickly breaks down. And you begin to fail in every role, and thus in life itself. Nowhere could this be more obvious than in the context of air travel. Because when we are in a metal tube, 35,000 feet in the air, hurtling along at 600 miles an hour, it isn't the place for anyone to be their true selves or express themselves individually. Nobody. I don't want anyone on the plane doing that. Given the stakes and the consequences if things go wrong, and given that we're all stuck in close proximity to each other and that none of us can immediately exit the situation without suffering rather significant consequences, an airplane is then a place for decorum and professionalism. I want very little personal expression from the person sitting next to me, even less do I want it from the pilot. None of us are on the plane in order so that we can get to know the captain on an intimate and personal level. None of us are interested in his true self. That's not why we pay exorbitant sums to board the aircraft. We don't want the pilot to express himself. We want him to express the plane from point A to point B, and that's it. We simply want to arrive at our destination, and we want the flight crew to get us there as quickly and safely as possible and with as little drama as possible. Flamboyant individualism has never kept a plane in the sky. Engineering and physics is what keeps the plane in the sky, along with the expertise and professionalism on the part of the people in the cockpit. So that should be the focus. And I shouldn't have to say this, but this is also why you should not be cross-dressing while flying the plane. That is also why Virgin Atlantic is today canceled. And that'll do it for this portion of the show. As we move over to the members block, hope to see you there. If not, talk to you tomorrow. Godspeed.